My fiancé called me low class compared to his ex at our rehearsal dinner, so I exposed the truth he'd hidden for years and canceled the wedding. The next morning, my fiancé announced at our rehearsal dinner, "You're so low class compared to my ex." He said it in front of both our families. I stood, met his eyes, and replied, "You're right. I'd never cheat on you the way she did." Then I walked out. The wedding was canceled the following morning. My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 29 years old, and until 8 days before my wedding, I believed I was marrying a man who respected me. The rehearsal dinner was held in a private room at one of the city's most expensive restaurants, chosen entirely by Ethan's parents, even though he kept calling it our decision. Nearly 40 relatives and close friends filled the room beneath crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, while bottles of wine, worth more than my monthly car payment, sat untouched between us. That was the Whitmore family in a nutshell. They paid for everything, then quietly acted as though ownership came with the bill. They belonged to a world of country clubs, vacation homes, and family attorneys who attended holiday parties. My parents belonged to a different one. My father, Robert, had spent 32 years repairing cars, while my mother, Diane, worked exhausting nursing shifts and still called every Sunday to make sure I was eating properly. They sacrificed vacations, saved every dollar they could, and paid for my education without ever making me feel like a burden. I had always been proud of where I came from. Meeting Ethan's family slowly taught me that they saw it differently. I worked in technical support for a healthcare software company, earned a steady living, paid my own bills, and never depended on anyone else. To me, that was something to be proud of. To Ethan's family, it was simply another reminder that I wasn't one of them. The comments rarely sounded cruel on the surface. His mother dismissed anything affordable as low quality. Lauren called me scrappy because I built my own furniture. His father repeatedly asked whether my job was only a stepping stone to something more suitable. Every remark came wrapped in a smile, subtle enough that objecting made me look oversensitive. Whenever I brought it up, Ethan always had the same answer. "They don't mean anything by it. That's just how Mom talks." Sometimes he defended me, but only enough to smooth things over. Looking back, I realized he wasn't protecting me. He was translating me into someone his family could tolerate. The evening began pleasantly enough. Ethan's father welcomed everyone with a polished speech that sounded more like two wealthy families merging than two people getting married. Then my father stood. He smiled nervously before telling the story of 8-year-old me trying to repair my own bicycle. "I spent more time fixing what she broke than the bike itself," he said, earning a warm laugh from the room. "But she never quit. Claire has always believed that if something matters, you stay and fight for it." Then he turned toward Ethan. "I hope you both remember that love isn't about perfection. It's about respecting the person who stands beside you when life gets difficult." My throat tightened as my mother squeezed my hand beneath the table. Ethan smiled, but before sitting down, he glanced toward his father as if checking whether the speech had met the family's approval. Then he stood to give his own toast. After 3 glasses of wine, he started well enough, joking about our first date and the time I fixed a restaurant payment terminal while the manager panicked. Everyone laughed. So did I. Then his smile shifted. "When Claire and I first met," he said, lifting his glass, "I wasn't even sure she was my type." A few guests chuckled. I'd dated very different women before her. Something in my stomach tightened. My ex, Vanessa, had polish. Private school. She spoke French, always knew which fork to use. His mother smiled proudly. Ethan looked directly at me. "But Claire's different." I waited. "She's more authentic." He laughed. "Even if she is pretty low class compared to someone like Vanessa." The room froze. My mother's hand slipped away. My father slowly lowered his glass. Across the table, Ethan's friends exchanged uneasy glances, but none of them looked surprised. That was when everything clicked. If his comment had truly come out of nowhere, someone would have stopped him. His mother would have corrected him, his father would have looked horrified, or Lauren would have told him he had crossed a line. Instead, they only seemed embarrassed that he had said it in public. Not that he believed it. Ethan was still smiling, waiting for the room to laugh with him. "Did you just call me low class?" I asked. His expression faltered. "I said you were authentic. You compared me to Vanessa and called me low class." "It was a joke, Claire." No one laughed. He glanced around the table as if their silence were the problem, not what he had said. I rose from my chair. "You're absolutely right." Relief crossed his face. He thought I was about to save him. "I could never compare to Vanessa," I continued. "I would never cheat on you multiple times, especially not with your college roommate." The color drained from Ethan's face. His mother gasped, and his father's expression hardened. Most people knew Vanessa had cheated, but almost no one knew with whom. Ethan had hidden that detail for years, because the roommate's family belonged to the same country club as his parents. "Claire," he whispered, "you told me never to mention it because it humiliated you." I placed my napkin beside my untouched dessert. Now we both know what public humiliation feels like. "Wait." I turned to my parents. "Mom, Dad, I'm leaving." They stood immediately. My brother joined them, followed by my aunt, cousins, and bridesmaids. "Claire, don't do this," Ethan said as he hurried around the table. "I'm not doing anything to you." Panic replaced his arrogance. We're both upset. Sit down and talk to me. I'm completely sober, Ethan. That's not what I meant. I know. I walked away while chairs scraped behind me and Ethan called my name. His mother accused me of making a scene, but I never turned around. The main dining room fell quiet as my family followed me outside. Before I reached the valet stand, Mom wrapped her arms around me. I'm okay, I said automatically, though I wasn't. Dad stood beside us, his jaw tight. You don't have to go back inside, and you don't have to marry him. That made the decision real. In 8 days, 150 guests were supposed to watch me promise Ethan the rest of my life. Through the restaurant doors, I could see him arguing with his father while Lauren stood nearby with her hands over her face. I'm not marrying him. Dad nodded. Good. My phone started vibrating before I reached my car. Ethan, then his mother, then Ethan again. I silenced it and drove home alone. My apartment was already half-packed because I had planned to move into Ethan's condo after the honeymoon. Boxes lined the walls, filled with belongings meant for the neighborhood he preferred and the home his family had helped choose. Even my dishes had been replaced because his mother thought they looked mismatched. I sat among those boxes for nearly an hour before opening my laptop. At 11 that night, I called the wedding planner. This is Claire Morgan. The wedding scheduled for next Saturday is canceled. Please send me a full breakdown of every vendor and cancellation fee under my name. Then I texted Rachel. Wedding's off. I'll explain tomorrow. Please tell the bridesmaids not to contact Ethan. She replied immediately. I'm coming over. I told her not to and turned off my phone. From the couch, I could see my wedding dress hanging in the bedroom doorway. For months, I had imagined Ethan's face when he saw me wearing it. Now I wondered how often he had compared me to Vanessa, how many private jokes his family had made, and how many times he had defended me only after joining them. Those questions hurt more than the insult itself. By morning, vendors would be contacted, guests would receive cancellation notices, deposits would be lost, and both families would choose sides. There would be no graceful way to reverse what I had started. That night, I finally let myself cry. Not because I had lost Ethan, but because I understood how long I had been disappearing beside him. I woke at 7:42 the next morning with sunlight across the bedroom floor and my phone vibrating nonstop on the nightstand. For a few seconds, I forgot everything. Then I saw 89 missed calls, more than 200 messages, and the wedding dress, still hanging in the doorway. I made coffee before reading any of them. I needed one ordinary thing before facing the life I had dismantled the night before. Ethan had sent 31 messages. The first ones were desperate. Claire, please call me. I'm sorry. I was drunk. Don't make any decisions tonight. Then desperation turned into blame. You're blowing this out of proportion. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. How could you reveal something that private? His final message made him sound like the victim. I can't believe you're destroying our wedding over one sentence. His mother demanded an apology for ruining the rehearsal dinner. His father ordered me to call so we could discuss this like adults, while Lauren accused me of being childish and cruel. Only my brother made me smile. That was legendary. Mom's worried. Call her when you're awake. At 9, the wedding planner called to confirm the cancellation. I'm sorry, she said, but with only 8 days' notice, most of your deposits are gone. She walked me through the numbers. The catering payment was non-refundable, along with the florist and most of the venue deposit. The photographer would return half, and the DJ would refund a small portion. I wrote everything on the back of an electricity bill and added the total twice. Nearly $12,000. 2 years of packed lunches, skipped vacations, and overtime shifts were disappearing because I had chosen not to stand beside Ethan at the altar. The loss hurt, but it didn't change my answer. What about the contracts under his parents' names? They paid for the main venue rental, decor, rehearsal dinner, transportation, Ethan's suit, and several upgrades. Their losses will likely be between $35,000 and $40,000. Then they can handle those cancellations themselves. I understand. I'll send you the full breakdown before contacting the vendors. The moment we hung up, Ethan called. I answered before I could reconsider. Are you seriously canceling everything? He demanded. No greeting, no apology. Yes. 8 days before the wedding? That's usually what cancellation means. Claire, stop. You're angry, but this is insane. You called me low class in front of 40 people. It was one stupid comment. One comment that showed me exactly how you see me. I don't see you that way. You compared me to Vanessa and said I was low class. I was drunk. That explains why you said it in public. It doesn't explain why you believed it. He exhaled sharply, but he had no answer. I was trying to say you were more genuine than Vanessa. Then you should have said that. I did. No, you insulted me and waited for everyone to laugh. You humiliated me too. You mean when I told the truth about Vanessa? That was private. So was your contempt for me. His voice hardened. You're being dramatic. That word ended the conversation for me, not because it shocked me, but because it was exactly what I expected him to say. Enjoy explaining this to the 150 guests who were supposed to attend next Saturday. You can't cancel everything. Half of it is already paid for. Watch me. My parents are furious. They can be furious somewhere else. Can we at least talk in person? No, I'm hanging up. I blocked his number and called my landlord. 3 months earlier, I had given notice on my apartment because everyone assumed I would move into Ethan's condo after the honeymoon. By sheer luck, The couple scheduled to take my unit had backed out the day before. "You want to stay?" Mr. Jacobs asked. "Yes. Same rent, new 12-month lease." "Send it over." Next, I called the bank. Ethan and I had opened a joint account for wedding expenses and what he called our shared future. I had contributed $15,000. He had deposited $5,000. The banker confirmed that either account holder could transfer funds, so I moved only my contribution into a new account and left every dollar of Ethan's untouched. Then I changed the passwords to my email, insurance, cloud storage, phone account, and credit cards. By noon, I had protected my apartment, my money, and every account connected to my name. The speed of it unsettled me. Some part of me had apparently known exactly how to leave. Mom called shortly afterward. "What he said was cruel," she told me. "You know that, don't you?" "Yes. You are hardworking, generous, and kind. You are not low class." "I know. Do you?" I closed my eyes. "I'm starting to." She told me Dad wanted to confront Ethan's father, which made me laugh despite everything. "Tell him I appreciate it, but I've got this. We're proud of you. For canceling the wedding? For leaving before they convinced you to apologize for being insulted." Rachel arrived soon afterward with pizza and beer, ignoring my request to stay home. "You needed food more than privacy," she said as she stepped around the half-packed boxes. We sat on the floor because most of my furniture had already been moved to Ethan's condo. "I've waited 3 years to say this," she said. "His family is awful. I know that now. They were awful at every dinner and every party. Your job, your dad's garage, your brother's truck. Nothing was ever good enough." Ethan always smiled and made it sound harmless. "His friends didn't look surprised last night?" Rachel's expression changed. "They weren't." That answer stayed with me. Around 4, an unknown number called. I answered because I was expecting vendors, but Ethan's father spoke instead. "We need to discuss the financial consequences of your decision. I'm handling the contracts under my name. The venue deposit is $15,000 and non-refundable. Then you've lost $15,000. You canceled. Your son publicly humiliated me. He chose his words poorly after too much wine. And I made the right decision after too much disrespect." He suggested postponing the wedding, arranging counseling, and creating distance between the families. Then his voice lowered. "Claire, do you understand the kind of life Ethan could have given you?" There it was. Not the life we could have built together. The life Ethan could have given me, as though marrying him were an act of charity. I don't want a life someone gives me while reminding me to be grateful. That isn't what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. I want a partner, not a sponsor. You'll regret throwing this away. No, I would regret staying. I ended the call and blocked him. That evening, the planner confirmed that the cancellation notices had gone out. The ceremony, reception, transportation, and honeymoon vanished from the calendar one after another. Losing them hurt, but beneath the grief was relief. For 3 years, Ethan's family had treated their world like a prize I should be grateful to enter. By the end of that day, I understood I had not lost access to a better life. I had escaped one in which I would spend every year proving I deserved to be there. The week that should have been filled with rehearsals, dress fittings, and relatives arriving turned into something else entirely. By Monday, I had blocked Ethan, his parents, Lauren, and every unknown number they could find. By Tuesday, they had simply found new ways to reach me. The first voicemail arrived at work, after Melissa, from reception, unknowingly transferred Ethan's mother to my extension. "Claire," Margaret said calmly, "I hope you'll reconsider this childish decision. You're letting your insecurities destroy something beautiful, and I sincerely think you should speak to a therapist about your commitment issues." I stared at my monitor after the message ended. Commitment issues. Because I refused to marry a man who had publicly called me low class. A few minutes later, Melissa set 2 coffees on my desk. "I probably shouldn't ask." "You can." She hesitated before saying, "Anyone who insults his fiancé like that doesn't deserve one." It wasn't complicated advice or an attempt to fix anything. It was simply the first confirmation from someone outside my family that I wasn't the unreasonable one. The next evening, my apartment concierge called. "There's a woman downstairs insisting she's your future sister-in-law." "I don't have one." "We thought that might be your answer." Lauren refused to leave, shouting through the lobby that I was being ridiculous and demanding 5 minutes. I reached for my keys before the concierge stopped me. "Our security staff has it handled." For the first time, I listened. 3 weeks earlier, I would have gone downstairs to keep the peace. This time, I stayed exactly where I was. A few minutes later, he called back. "She's gone." "Thank you." When I hung up, the apartment felt quieter than it had in months. No criticism, no comparisons, no reminders that I wasn't good enough. Thursday brought a different tactic. I was halfway through lunch at my favorite cafe when someone stopped beside my table. "Claire?" I looked up and recognized Natalie, one of Ethan's college friends. We had only met twice before. "What a coincidence," Natalie said as she sat down across from me. "Is it?" She gave an awkward smile. "Ethan asked me to talk to you." I figured. He feels terrible. He knows he was drunk. He knows what he said was awful. Maybe the cancellation has gone far enough. I studied her for a moment. If Ethan had believed I was beneath him for 3 years but never accidentally admitted it out loud, would anything actually be different? She didn't answer. I didn't end the engagement because of one sentence, I said. I ended it because that sentence explained 3 years of comments, jokes, and excuses. I reminded her how his mother criticized my parents, his father questioned my career, and Lauren mocked my family while Ethan smiled through it all. He defended you sometimes, Natalie said quietly. Not enough. I leaned forward. Were you surprised when he said it? She looked down at her coffee before shaking her head. No, that was all I needed. It hadn't been one drunken mistake. It was a belief everyone around him already recognized. I'm sorry, she whispered. I believe you. And Ethan really is devastated. I don't doubt it. I just think he's devastated because I finally left. Natalie couldn't argue with that. She apologized once more before walking away. Friday evening, Ethan reached me again from another number. I know I hurt you, he said. I've replayed that dinner 100 times. I stayed silent. But canceling everything was too much. The apology lasted less than a minute before he started defending the wedding, instead of regretting what he'd done. We've spent 3 years building a future, he said. The honeymoon is booked. We talked about buying a house, having kids. How can you throw all of that away? I'm not throwing away our future, I replied. I'm refusing the future your family planned for me. He insisted I was imagining things, so I reminded him of every little comment he had dismissed over the years. His mother criticizing my cooking and my parents, his father questioning my career, Lauren mocking my neighborhood, and every conversation that ended with, that's just how they are. You've built this fantasy in your head. No, I lived it. After a long silence, he said quietly, I can change. I hope you do. You don't believe me? I forgive you, Ethan, but forgiveness isn't the same as trust. His breathing caught. So, that's it? Yes. You don't love me anymore? I thought about the question before answering. I think I stopped feeling safe with you long before I stopped loving you. Neither of us spoke again. I ended the call and blocked that number too. Saturday should have been my wedding day. Instead of getting ready for a 3 o'clock ceremony, I stayed in pajamas until noon, while Rachel, my brother, and 2 bridesmaids filled my apartment with takeout, video games, and enough laughter to drown out the silence. Around the time I should have been walking down the aisle, Mom called. Margaret Whitmore phoned your father this morning, she said. Let me guess. She said you ruined Ethan's life and that we raised you wrong. What did Dad say? Mom laughed. He told her we raised a daughter who knows her worth, wished Ethan well, and hung up. I laughed through the sting in my eyes. When the call ended, I looked around the room. Rachel was arguing over pizza toppings, my brother had just lost another race, and everyone was laughing over something completely unimportant. For the first time in weeks, I realized I wasn't thinking about the wedding I had canceled. I was thinking about how peaceful my life had become. By the 7th week, life had settled into a quieter rhythm. The shock faded, but people were still talking about the canceled wedding. The final statement from the wedding planner confirmed what I already knew. Between non-refundable deposits and cancellation fees, I had lost just under $12,000. It hurt. Then I imagined standing beside Ethan at the altar instead. Suddenly, $12,000 felt like a bargain. Rachel kept hearing updates through mutual friends. The Whitmores have lost almost $40,000, she told me over dinner one night. The venue couldn't be rebooked, and all the custom decor was already finished. I nodded. They'll survive. There was no satisfaction in their losses, only a sense that actions finally had consequences. A week later, an unknown number appeared on my phone. This is Attorney Collins, the caller said. I represent the Whitmore family. For a moment, I wondered if they were actually suing me. They asked about pursuing damages over the canceled wedding, he continued. I've already advised them they have no legal case. No one can be forced to go through with a marriage. I assumed as much. I also suggested they stop contacting you. Did they listen? He gave a quiet laugh. I can only offer legal advice. Before ending the call, he added one last thing. Off the record, my wife heard what happened at the rehearsal dinner. He paused. I think you made the right decision. Even their own attorney wasn't defending them. Over the next few weeks, mutual friends reached out, not to pressure me, but to apologize. I should have said something. I noticed those comments too. I didn't realize how bad it had become. The pattern was impossible to ignore. The people who defended Ethan talked about the embarrassment of canceling a wedding. The people who defended me talked about respect. From that point on, I knew exactly where everyone stood. A couple of weeks later, Mom called. Ethan mailed you a handwritten letter. How long? 6 pages. I laughed. What should I do with it? She asked. If he needs 6 pages to explain why calling me low class wasn't how he really feels, then he still doesn't understand. So? Shred it. You sure? Very. Before hanging up, she smiled. Your father almost read it first to make sure there wasn't anything in it that could hurt you. That sounded exactly like Dad. A few days later, Ethan's father called him instead. He wanted a man-to-man conversation, Dad told me over coffee. What did he say? He claimed emotions were ruining something valuable. And what did you tell him? That his son ruined it all by himself. Dad took another sip of coffee. Then he said you were throwing away a privileged future. I smiled. What did you say? I told him I'd rather my daughter build her own future than borrow someone else's. Then he hung up. That was the end of the conversation, and exactly the answer I would have expected from him. Around 6 weeks later, life had finally begun to feel normal again. One Saturday morning, I pulled into my favorite coffee shop and immediately spotted Ethan's car. He was sitting alone on the patio, glancing toward the entrance every few seconds, waiting for me. He looked thinner, tired. For a moment I remembered road trips, late-night movies, and dancing together in the kitchen. Then I heard his voice again. "You're pretty low class compared to Vanessa." The memory ended there. I backed out of the parking space, drove to another cafe, and ordered the same coffee. It tasted exactly the same. Sometimes healing isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's simply refusing to reopen a door you've already closed. That afternoon, I received a LinkedIn request from Emily Sanders, one of Ethan's college friends. A minute later, she messaged me. "Ethan knows he made mistakes. He just wants one mature conversation." I reported the message as spam, not because it was offensive, but because every message carried the same assumption, that I still owed Ethan another chance. I didn't. Ethan, meanwhile, filled social media with vague posts about mistakes, growth, and real love. At first, his friends flooded the comments with support, but within a few weeks, even that faded. People eventually stopped sympathizing with a story that never changes. The most unexpected message came through Instagram. A caterer from the rehearsal dinner wrote to me, "You probably don't remember me, but everyone working that night heard what Ethan said." Another message followed. "When you stood up, our pastry chef whispered, 'Please don't stay.'" Then came the last one. "When you walked out, the kitchen applauded." I stared at the screen. Not because strangers had applauded, but because people who had known me for only a few minutes recognized disrespect faster than I had after 3 years. I replied with one sentence, "Thank you. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that." The answer came immediately. "You deserve better. Everyone knew it." For weeks I had wondered whether I had overreacted. That conversation erased every remaining doubt. The following Monday, my manager asked me into a conference room. For a second, I thought Ethan's family had contacted work again. Instead, he smiled. "We're promoting you." I blinked. "Senior Technical Support Specialist. We were already considering it, but the way you've handled everything confirmed the decision." "So everyone knows?" He nodded. "News travels, but around here, people aren't talking about a canceled wedding." He slid the paperwork across the table. "They're talking about someone who respected herself enough to walk away." As I returned to my desk with the promotion letter in my hand, I realized how wrong I had been 6 weeks earlier. I thought losing Ethan meant losing my future. Instead, it was the first step toward building one that finally belonged to me. By the second month, my life no longer revolved around a canceled wedding. It revolved around me. I renewed my lease for another year. As Mr. Jacobs handed me the paperwork, he smiled. "I never liked the idea of you giving this place up." Neither had I. Walking back into my apartment, I saw it differently. The old blue sofa, the bookshelf Dad had helped me build, and the wobbly dining table my brother kept promising to fix weren't elegant, but every piece belonged to me. For months, I had treated the apartment like a temporary stop before moving into Ethan's condo. Now it finally felt like home again. Work became another reminder that I was moving forward. The promotion came with a raise from $55,000 to $63,000. It wasn't life-changing money, but every paycheck reminded me that I'd earned it myself. A week later, several coworkers invited me to a backyard barbecue. Normally, I would have declined, because wedding planning had swallowed every weekend. This time, I said yes without hesitation. Rachel laughed as we walked in. "This is the first invitation you've accepted in months." She was right. My weekend finally belonged to me instead of a seating chart or vendor meeting. That evening, I met Daniel by accident. He was struggling to open a bottle with a plastic fork. "You know that's never going to work," I said. I was starting to suspect that. I pulled the small multi-tool Dad had given me off my keychain and opened the bottle. Daniel laughed. "You carry that everywhere?" "My dad thinks everyone should know how to fix basic things." "I already like your dad." "So do I." He taught 4th grade at a nearby elementary school, drove an old Honda with almost 200,000 miles on it, and seemed genuinely impressed when I mentioned changing my own brake pads. We spent the next hour talking about books, travel, terrible reality TV, and everything except money or status. It felt refreshingly normal. As the evening ended, Daniel smiled. "It was really nice meeting you, Claire." "You too." He hesitated before asking, "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" There was no performance or practice charm, just an honest question. "I'd like that," I said. Our first coffee date happened 4 days later. Daniel was already there with 2 drinks waiting on the table. "I hope vanilla is still your favorite." "You remembered?" "You mentioned it at the barbecue." The small gesture caught me off guard. After 3 years together, Ethan still asked whether I took sugar. Daniel remembered my order after one conversation. We spent 2 hours talking instead of trying to impress each other. Childhood stories, favorite teachers, books, and the strange things our parents believed could solve every problem. "My mom thinks soup fixes everything," he admitted. "My mom swears fresh towels can cure a bad day." He laughed. "I'd like to meet your family someday." The word family stayed with me. He wasn't asking about money, status, or background. Near the end of the afternoon, he hesitated. "Rachel mentioned you recently ended an engagement." I nodded. "You don't have to explain." "I'd rather you hear it from me." I told him the important parts. The rehearsal dinner, the comparison to Vanessa, the words low class, and the canceled wedding. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked only one question. "Did anyone stand up for you before you stood up for yourself?" My parents. He nodded. I'm glad you left. That single sentence lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Over the next few weeks, we kept seeing each other. Museums, miniature golf, quiet dinners, and long conversations that never turned into competitions. Daniel never tried to impress me, and when his old Honda refused to start one rainy evening, he laughed instead of getting frustrated. I guess she's protesting the weather. When I handed him the jumper cables from my trunk, he grinned. You carry those too? My dad's influence. I definitely need to meet him. Eventually, Ethan heard I was seeing someone. Rachel called the same day. Apparently, he's telling everyone you never loved him because you've already moved on. 7 weeks isn't exactly yesterday. My thoughts exactly. I wasn't interested in defending myself anymore. A few days later, another envelope arrived. This time it came from a law firm. Margaret Whitmore claimed I had damaged Ethan's reputation by spreading false statements. I read it twice, then laughed. I hadn't posted online, spoken publicly, or responded to any of Ethan's vague social media posts. I called my college friend Olivia, now an attorney. She skimmed the letter and smiled. This is intimidation. So what do we do? We answer it. She sent a short response stating I had made no public statements and that any further unwanted contact could be treated as harassment. After that, nothing. No more surprise calls, letters, or messages passed through mutual friends. The silence was almost startling. One evening, I stood on my apartment balcony, watching the sun disappear behind the rooftops. Daniel had texted about visiting the farmer's market that weekend. Mom had mailed homemade cookies, and Dad had left a voicemail reminding me to rotate my tires before winter. For weeks, I'd measured my life by what I'd escaped. Standing there, I realized I had finally started measuring it by what I was building instead. That ordinary life felt richer than anything Ethan's family had ever promised me. 3 months after I walked out of the rehearsal dinner, my life no longer felt interrupted. It finally felt like mine. The apartment was fully unpacked. The wedding boxes were gone, and I had donated my dress to a nonprofit that transformed wedding gowns into burial dresses for infants. It felt like a far kinder ending than letting it gather dust in a closet. Work settled into an easy rhythm. The promotion no longer felt new, and for the first time in years, Monday mornings didn't fill me with dread. Daniel and I were still taking things slowly, without pressure or expectations. For the first time in a long while, neither of us was trying to become someone else just to make the relationship work. And that felt exactly right. One Saturday, a mutual friend invited us to a birthday party at a neighborhood brewery. I almost declined until Rachel laughed. You've avoided enough parties for one lifetime. She was right. Daniel arrived after a parent-teacher conference wearing jeans, a faded blue shirt, and the same relaxed smile that always made me feel at ease. You look nice, he said. So do you. I spilled coffee on my first shirt. Very teacher of you. I try to stay authentic. I laughed. For the first time, the word authentic no longer reminded me of Ethan. About an hour later, someone called my name. I turned and immediately recognized Vanessa from the old photos Ethan had once shown me. This is probably awkward, she admitted. A little. I was hoping we could talk. Daniel looked at me. You okay? I think so. I'll grab another drink. He squeezed my hand once before walking away, not to rescue me, just to remind me he was there. Vanessa noticed. He seems like a good man. He is. After a long silence, she sighed. I wanted to apologize. You weren't the one comparing us. I know, but hearing Ethan use my name that way made me sick. She explained that Ethan had always described her as the perfect woman, but the reality had been very different. My dad's a plumber, she said with a laugh. The Whitmores hated that. I stared at her. Ethan never told me. Of course he didn't. She smiled sadly. They admired the version of me they invented, not the person I actually was. Then she admitted something Ethan had never told me. We were engaged. I blinked. For 6 months. He always said you left because you cheated. I had already given the ring back. The affair happened afterward. He rewrote the story, she said quietly. He rewrote a lot of stories. Then she shared the sentence that had convinced her to leave. My mother asked me, if someone loves you exactly as you are today, why do they spend every day trying to change you? The words landed harder than I expected. I thought about the wardrobe suggestions, the furniture, the table manners, and every small comment presented as help. None of it had been about helping. It had been about changing me. Daniel returned with 2 lemonades just as Vanessa smiled and stood. I'm glad you escaped, she said. So am I. She laughed. My husband says the same thing. You're married? Happily. What does he do? High school history teacher. Daniel pointed to himself. Elementary school. Vanessa laughed. Apparently teachers are good for both of us. By the time Vanessa walked away, Ethan felt more like an old chapter than a person still standing between us. A month later, my parents visited. Dad insisted we celebrate by going to a baseball game. What are we celebrating? I asked. Freedom. Mom rolled her eyes while Dad grinned, like he'd been waiting weeks to say it. During the 7th inning, he nudged my shoulder. When you were little, you worried too much about disappointing people. I remember. You finally stopped. I guess I did. He smiled. Best decision you ever made. That evening, Mom filled my refrigerator with leftovers while Dad pretended he hadn't stolen cookies from the cooling rack. Daniel stopped by with a bundle of wildflowers after noticing the baseball ticket sticking out of my purse. Good game? The home team won. What about you? I looked around my apartment, my parents laughing in the kitchen, Daniel smiling in the doorway, and a home that was completely mine. I think I won too. People still ask what happened between Ethan and me. I usually say we wanted different futures. The truth is simpler. Love cannot survive where respect no longer exists. Walking out of that rehearsal dinner cost me nearly $12,000, but it saved me from spending the rest of my life apologizing for being exactly who I was. Today, my life is wonderfully ordinary. I have a career I earned, friends who accept me as I am, parents who taught me dignity, a man who remembers my coffee order after hearing it once, and a home where no one measures my worth by money or appearances. Ethan thought calling me low class would make me feel small. Instead, it became the moment I stopped letting anyone else decide my value.